wide. All right. So we are official. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon as we dig into what the fundraising with Mallory Erickson. As I mentioned before, my name is Melissa Wetzel. I'm the immediate past president for the AFP Miami chapter, and I'm also your official fundraising nerd, your book club chair, and so happy that you're here with us today. We've got some housekeeping notes, as Christine mentioned. So first and foremost, if you don't have it on the calendar already, please save the date for National Philanthropy Day. It's going to be on November 7th at Jungle Island. Right now, you can nominate your outstanding volunteer, outstanding philanthropist, outstanding fundraising professional. We have a number of categories and nominations are open now through July 11th. I know Christine is going to pop in the information in the chat. Thank you, Christine. So we've got our next education session. It's going to be July 17th from 1 to 2 p.m. As I mentioned, some of the AI tools that are with us today, how AI actually works and what it means for fundraising. So if you're interested in that, if you want to dig into some of the behavioral psychology behind AI, definitely join us on July 17th. And then just a note for our potential members, our future members. Right now, AFP Global, now through July 31st, offers a coupon code for $50 off of your new membership at professional or associate categories. So, Christine, if you can add that to the chat as well as the code, it's AFPANNI25 at checkout, and that gets you $50 off, and you get to join this wonderful, glorious community. But right now, I want to turn our attention over to Miss Julia G. Donor Perfect is responsible for putting us together today and for gifting us a treasure trove of books that we were able to send over and dig into. So, Julia, if you want to say a few words and address the crowd.
Sure. I'm so grateful to be here and incredibly proud to know someone like Mallory. So I'm excited to hear her dig in and lead us through some conversations about her book. As has been mentioned, we are all kind of nerds around here. And so having a book club to discuss all things fundraising is really exciting. I am a former fundraiser. I was with an organization in Fort Lauderdale, Florida called First Priority. Some of you may know First Priority. I was the development director there for 5 years prior to working with Donor Perfect. And now I am the head of communications at Donor Perfect. For those who don't know, Donor Perfect is a fundraising software that offers tools, features, and best practices to empower fundraisers to gain and retain donors, to simplify their daily workflows, and grow the community that champions their cause. Donor Perfect helps organizations easily adopt today's most powerful fundraising strategies, from intelligent dashboards that turn data into insights to comparison donor profiles primed for segmentation. So we are a CRM and we are here for all of your fundraising, data, communication, all of those things. So if you're looking for a CRM, please consider Donor Perfect. And again, happy to be here. I'm really excited to hear from Mallory. Thank you all for having me.
Julia, thanks so much. Yes, a round of applause for Miss Julia and Donor Perfect. Thank you for putting this all together and putting us all together so that we can have this wonderful conversation with Mallory. So I'm going to go ahead and talk her up a little bit. I've got a bio to share with you about Miss Mallory. Mallory Erickson is an executive coach, fundraising consultant, and creator of the Power Partners Formula, a framework that helps nonprofit leaders raise more from aligned fundraisers without burning out. Amen. Through her programs, speaking, podcast, and writing, she's supported over 60,000 fundraisers in shifting away from transactional tactics and towards strategies rooted in alignment, confidence, and connection. She's the author of What the Fundraising, Embracing and Enabling the People Behind the Purpose, and host of the podcast by the same name. Her work explores the invisible systems that shape the fundraising experience, from chronic stress and perfectionism to the deep impact of scarcity mindset on individual fundraisers and the sector as a whole. There is so much more to say about Mallory, but I'm going to turn it over to her. Mallory, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. I'm so thrilled to be here with all of you. I was telling Melissa and Julia before this started that my 20-month-old was up all night. So you're getting a slightly slower version of me today. But I'm could not be happier to be spending the day with you guys. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us and for taking the time. We have all been there. Mallory, if you can kick us off by just giving us a general overview about what the fundraising.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just like start with why I wrote it in the first place because I think that kind of frames up the journey that is the book. I was an accidental fundraiser and really hated fundraising. I first, as a managing director, then executive director, had big fundraising responsibilities and felt like everybody understood some secret about fundraising that I just could never understand. And I was sure that I was a bad fundraiser because I felt really uncomfortable fundraising. And I was like, there's no way that good fundraisers want to throw up before every major donor meeting, right? This must be a sign that I'm a bad fundraiser. And I ended up having this sort of, it led to really tremendous burnout and chronic pain and me sort of, reevaluating my entire life. And I had this kind of accidental combination of life experiences where I was certified as an executive coach, trained in habit and behavior design and design thinking. And those frameworks really fundamentally changed the way that I fundraised. And not only did it help me raise a lot more money, but it helped me feel completely different as a fundraiser. And I started to love fundraising. And so I didn't become a coach or a consultant because I burnt out on fundraising and decided to just tell people to fundraise instead. I actually really loved fundraising and then just wanted to share everything that I learned with my peers. And my work really kind of organically took off from there until I could no longer do that support of the sector and my frontline fundraising and went into this work full time. And I share that because that set me off on this journey of sort of this hyper fixation of trying to understand the relationship between how we feel as fundraisers and what we do. And so for 5 years on my podcast, What the Fundraising, which is the research basis of my book, I started to interview behavioral scientists and therapists and psychologists and neuroscientists about all these moments in fundraising that either I had had or my clients were having and what was happening in those moments. Why would we feel resistance around this thing? Why is everybody burning out at such a high rate? And not just overwork, because I started to work with clients for years and they weren't working more than 40 hours a week. Some of them were working 30 hours a week, but they were still burning out. And so it sort of like set me on this quest to really try to understand why are we seeing these dual crises in the sector, which part one of the book is really framing up the problem. This dual crisis of fundraiser burnout and people leaving our sector in droves at the same time as we're seeing declines in participation with the nonprofit sector. Declines even when maybe the amount of money is stable, quote unquote stable, because of people like Mackenzie Scott that sort of overinflate the numbers that we see. We do know that participation from a donor perspective in the nonprofit sector is declining. So I'm watching these two kind of crises happen at the same time, and I'm just like, there's no way these are different problems. Like, there's no way these are unrelated problems. And I'm neurodiverse. And so, if you know anything about neurodiversity, it's a lot of like trying to find patterns and connection, at least in how it materializes for me. And so I set off on this quest to really understand the interconnection between these problems, which is what part one of the book is focused on, from the history of our sector to the beliefs that it has embedded in the sector, from scarcity mindset to transactional fundraising, and then the way that those collective thoughts and beliefs trickle down to an individual level and what happens inside our brains and our bodies because we have those thoughts or beliefs or we experience those systemic things. And then it's not all bad. Okay, so that's part one. Part two of the book is about the solutions that I've been finding over the last 5 years, given all of it, right? Like, but really on an individual level. That's something I sort of want to say. Part one of the book, the other side of the solutions are the systemic solution, the systems change solutions that need to happen in order to better support fundraisers. And my deep hope in writing the book was that systems change experts would take the problem part and write their own solutions to those side of the problems. But my training is on what can we do as individuals, given the systems that we live in, what can we do as individuals to change our daily experience as much as possible. And so the solution section of the book goes over my executive coaching framework, the way that we can rewire and retrain the thoughts and beliefs in our head that do shift our experience and our awareness and our consciousness around our role, and how that inner alignment allows us to then find alignment with our funders and alignment as an intention, not just a strategy. So it goes from this sort of creating inner alignment with chapter in the book to talking about how to identify and then build alignment with funders. And then the book really ends with how you build connected relationships and the science of connection, which all of it, I think of these as sort of like concentric circles because we can't build connection with each other if we aren't connected to ourselves. And I think one of the most kind of jaw-dropping interviews I did on the podcast that probably was a huge inspiration for the book was, interviewing somebody about what happens to our brain and our body when we're in stress and the role that plays in our ability to actually build relationships. And what this neuroscientist was saying was like, yeah, when you're in a stress state, your brain shuts off everything that isn't related to survival. And so you lose the capacity for connection and curiosity and compassion and empathy. And I don't know about you, but my whole life as a fundraiser, I was told just build relationships. But then within this system that was so stressful, and I never understood why I couldn't build relationship, just build relationships. And so literally on that podcast episode, I go, wait, 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 wait. And I think for me, it was just this sort of like explosion moment, which is at the crux of this book, which is like what we tell fundraisers to do, what we are trying to do is being sabotaged by a lot of the frameworks and systems around us. And we can change our experience to those, but we have to first understand what's happening.
That was amazing. I mean, mic drop. I think we're done. No, I'm just kidding. We're But that was so, so meaty, Mallory. Thank you. Yes, no, that really, and that all comes through so beautifully within the book. Being able to, I think, frame this conversation through your personal experiences. And by the way, for all the fundraising nerds out there, she gives us like 20 or more different books to then dig into and different podcast episodes and things. So like definitely from this, it becomes a launching pad into additional opportunities to explore. But so thank you very much for that. So we're going to pull that apart almost one piece at a time. What I'd like to start with for the group here, and please unmute yourselves as you go and introduce yourself to the team. I'd love to understand how the folks in this virtual space got to be a fundraiser in the first place. Were you an accidental fundraiser, or was this in your heart from the beginning? If you're willing, I'd love to hear from a few folks to just understand about your initial role into coming into the space.
I'll start if you don't mind. I'm Doreen Gordon-Williams. I'm relatively new to our local chapter. I've not been extremely active, but I had the pleasure of meeting Madam President at the AFP conference in Seattle, and it was all done. I would say that I wasn't an accidental fundraiser, but I was always an asker to help others meet needs. Um, Not a shy person. If I saw a need and I knew somebody who could help them, my goal was to connect them. When I found out that this was an actual profession, I was actually actively engaged in as a healthcare executive, helping people to obtain healthcare and restore their health. So took a step back and was doing some work in one of my children's schools. And I was like, what? I can ask people for money in addition to gift in kind types of things. So this just seemed to be like a natural progression. But as I tried to delve into the book, and I've not finished, and I'm so sorry, but I did get through a lot of the first half. Working for a very large institution now as a director of development in education, higher education, um, I'm sure everybody can attest to the fact that stress is real. We've got a lot going on in particularly the higher ed space, and metrics are metrics, and KPIs are KPIs, and we're mighty but a small team, which adds a little bit more to it. So I just want to say thank you to Mallory and to the AFP local leadership for providing this resource to us. And I did see all of the other resources. I'm going to have a fun time as I plan for my goal attainment for the next coming fiscal year. So thank you very much. I appreciate being invited to this space and being a part of this group and reading this book with you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Also, we had a couple of other folks. So Alex Salcedo says, accidental exclamation point. And Helen Quinn shares that she started on the program side and realized that there was a lot more money that was needed to expand. And that's how she got started. Christine said, definitely an accidental fundraiser, but so grateful that she found it. Marta from Sophia's Hope, Marta Blanco says, completely accidental. Yes. Yes. Anyone else want to share their story real fast? Yes, Sabrina, go ahead.
Chair and Mallory, thank you so much for writing this book. I remember the days, the sleepless nights myself. And I think that that's a whole nother thing, being a fundraiser while raising a baby. I think not part of the question at all, but that was the most stressful time of my career, being pregnant and fundraising. That was very hard. I've been fundraising for 12 years. I'm the director of major gifts at the Perez Art Museum, Miami. Definitely an accidental fundraiser. I still to this day have not met someone that has not been an accidental fundraiser. I think people that go into this profession just want to help and support. For me, I was really involved in my local church at the age of 18, and I would personally do little fundraisers to support mission trips. So we went to like Uruguay and Dominican Republic to ship shoes, and I would do little fundraisers to be able to support those missions. But personally, I wanted to be an attorney. So I wanted to help people in a different way. I started off being a paralegal, studied criminal justice. And then I was always behind the scenes with the phone, not getting to see the people that we supported. And that was very depressing for me. So I went to a recruiter and said, hey, I just want to help my community, support my community. I'm doing law right now, kind of pursuing that career. What could I do? And the recruiter said, go into nonprofit. So I got a job as the executive assistant to a director of development. And my first job, I was responsible for developing an employee giving program. My bonus was, I don't know if this is AFP compliant, but my bonus was contingent on the success of this program. The first year without any fundraising experience, I raised over $100,000, and it was an amazing employee giving program. And once the head of the development left the organization, within a year and a half, I was responsible for raising $3 million for the organization. Wow. And I did it. And I loved it. And since then, I built several development departments throughout organizations in New York City. And then I hated it again and thought, okay, why do I keep on doing all of this development work? And for the past 3 years, I've decided to focus only on individual giving. And I've really loved it, enjoyed it. I think it's really the thing for me. But thank you again, Mallory. I think there's so much validation in reading your book. And also, we never maybe all of you do. I personally don't. I don't step back and just kind of reflect and think, how am I feeling? Like, is my glass full? How am I able to support other individuals, even persuade them to give if I myself am not full? So yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you so much for sharing. We've gotten some additional notes on the side here. Yeah, so many accidental fundraisers, and yet here we are, so full of passion and compassion to make our communities and the world a better place. We do want to help, and so that's what we're here to do, but also it's helping ourselves along the way. That's what it really, Mallory, the book as I read it, and as I said to you earlier, man, I feel like you wrote it just for me. You're speaking my language because it's just things that I share, with colleagues and friends, but it just being able to see it all laid out with all the research to back it up, to say, yes, it is valid. There's so many feelings and there's so many moments where energies can be high and low from one moment to the next. And it's all part of the process and it's very real. And we do also need to take care of ourselves because that affects the sector overall. So as we well know, Giving USA comes out every summer. So we're about due. But last year's report showed that we raised $500 million. I mean, that's incredible as a sector, and yet giving is down. There's a giving crisis and there's a fundraiser crisis that's happening right now. So I wanted to just start to dig into some of the feels a little bit. So Mallory in the book identifies discomfort, stigma, chronic stress, and how they contribute to burnout amongst fundraisers. So I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. I love the chapter title, by the way. This job feels awful. So it just,
I did not
there's
hold
something,
back.
no. So it's like the good, the bad, the ugly, but I would just love to, kind of talk about this a little bit if someone's willing to, just share a moment, a story of like, man, like this, we're doing all this work. I'm taxed with raising $3 million. It's happening. It feels good. And yet, there's rejection at every turn. Feeling it's like a low grade fever. Like there's always that level of stress that's running in the background a little bit. At least that's how I feel. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I'll share.
Yes. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Um, I just felt, as everyone will say, I felt so seen by this book, and really changed my mindset at looking, I think, as fundraisers, we're kind of the invisible factor in all of it. We're always very concerned about like the donor's experience or our organization's experience, those we serve's experience. And there's this kind of disconnect of what impact and what we bring to the table. And burnout, especially now, is so real with so much influx, and the world just kind of seems like this haze. Um, I used the word in an admin meeting the other day, like inert. Everyone just feels like they're holding their breath for the next thing. And but so much is needed, and it's just everything feels a little bit frozen. And so I feel frozen too. So in that same regard, yes, goals are being met, yes, things are happening, but I think for my personal impact, I work for an organization that I'm the first professional fundraiser they've had. So I feel so much not only the role of physically doing the work, but also educating at the same time. So those two, I'm doing so much of both, and everything kind of feels very, not an excuse giver, but I'm like, oh, I have to explain the context of how this is happening or how this is happening. I'm like, yes, we're making goal, but it's not in the way we thought we would, or here's this. And it just feels like this constant push forward. Um, and I think that certainly, and I think it's also very much expected of nonprofits to run lean. I think that's like endemic, right? They don't want to see a lot of admin costs, and so much is expected of so few. So I think that is a huge root of, burnout. And so many foundations want to see that you're running lean and you're not too heavy on admin or this. And so it becomes this kind of cycle where you hesitate to not only find the funding for additional help, but there's so little of it to go around to stay appealing, to stay shiny. So I don't have any great. I'm happy. All in all, love my job. But I think that's the overall sense I'm getting right now.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing, Sarah. Of course, especially for your particular circumstance where you are the first fundraiser, and so you very clearly you feel that level of responsibility and weight to be able to do it right, to establish those best practices out of the gate, to be able to educate, inform, and bring up and lead up to your directors and leadership and what have you. But my God, did you just step into like the wonderful world of the overhead? Mallory has a great section. Mallory, I don't know if you want to chat about this briefly, about some different prompts to be able to share with potential funders who are always looking. Of course, there's that responsibility to balance, but also I like some of the phrasing that you shared about, shifting perspective of investing in that core so that you can build out your programs more effectively.
Do you want me to talk about that a little
Yes,
bit?
ma'am. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think and this is different everywhere, but I do feel like there is well, maybe I'll say this. Right now, I mean, it's crazy that I wrote the book like last October, and it feels like in a lot of ways we're in a different sector, or we're dealing with so many different things today than we were, especially with changes in federal funding. But I think we're also seeing some positive trends in more funders opening up unrestricted funding. So one thing I do just want to say about like that programmatic side, and you're right, nothing changes the expectations of running lean or, anything like that. I mean, there's so much inequity in the expectations put on nonprofits versus other institutions. I remember when COVID first hit and, everything was shutting down and all these companies were filing for bankruptcy. And I was like, wait, they don't have a 6-month reserve? Like, why, as an executive director, have I been hounded about a 6-month reserve for my entire career? And like United Airlines is bankrupt? Like, I just like couldn't handle it. And so I feel like there's definitely a lot of kind of like inequitable expectations in terms of us. So I agree with everything that you said, Sarah. And I do think like a lot of funders can be brought along to expand their thinking of what impact means beyond how they've typically thought of it, right? Like there's a lot of also history in our sector of us as nonprofits feeding some of those myths, right? Have 100% of your donation go to program, or we have kind of directed funding towards like these concrete things. And sometimes for me, there's this question of like the chicken or the egg, right? And I'm just like, okay, we're lost in this cycle, but like, who does care about this anymore? Does everybody care about this now? And I think what my clients have found, what I found more than I expected, was that inviting people into a conversation around like, hey, I know your number one goal here is blank impact. And that's why we want to work with you, because that is our goal too. And are you open to hearing a little bit around what actually allows us to achieve that goal? Because there are some, there's sort of like the surface level of what we can share in an email or, at a gala, an event. But I want to take you like one step deeper and really show you behind the scenes what quality program delivery like that looks like and what it takes. And those do need to happen through more nuanced one-on-one conversations. But I think that's where kind of discovery around motivations and interests and what lights them up and thinking about their professional career, right? Like on a board of directors, I will find these executives when they're with the whole board talking about how the organization shouldn't be spending marketing dollars. And I'm like, is that what's happening in your business right now? Like nobody's spending money on marketing and you're expecting sales to still go smoothly? Like, no, that's not happening in your business right now. But sometimes it takes that one-on-one conversation to say, okay, well, how do you solve that in your business? I met with a CEO once around this. I was like, hey, I've heard you at these meetings talking about cutting marketing. And I'm curious, like you lead a big company. How do you solve that in your business? Like when you're thinking about the relationship between sales and marketing and budget constraints, like what's that relationship like there? Like talk me through how to solve this problem without marketing dollars. And I said it in a really, I was very curious. I was like, what can I do like other than this? And it was like a huge light bulb moment. But sometimes those more nuanced conversations really do need to be happening one-on-one because you're inviting them to be more curious too, right? And that relates to some of the catabolic and anabolic energy stuff that I talk about in the book and the 7 styles of leadership is really inviting other people to also enter other types of energy for themselves, other different thoughts and beliefs for themselves that then invite, I think, more open funding conversations, more open support conversations. So did that, Melissa, answer that kind of how you were where you were hoping I would go there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, so we're already halfway through because, time flies when we're having fun. So you introduced the concept from the book of the seven levels of energy that I'd love to spend a few minutes on. And then I want to be able to just open it up to questions from the team. I have more than enough questions to carry us through, but I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask you and ask our colleagues questions as well, in and around the framework of the book. So for now, I'm going to put up on the screen page 104 that talks about the 7 levels of energy. And if you can tell us a little bit about that, and we'll go from there. Did I do it right?
Oh, there we go. Yes. Yes, perfect. So, my coaching certification was through an organization called IPEC, the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. And one of the things you get certified in when you go through that coaching program is this Energy Leadership Index assessment. The idea behind the assessment is that it helps you understand the lenses through which you're currently seeing the world, right? So if we're wearing rose-colored glasses, everything is seeming slightly pink or red. If we're wearing green-colored glasses, everything is slightly green. This is true also for the energy that is inside of us. Like we don't see the world as it is, right? We see it as we are. Whoever said a quote kind of similar to that. But the world exists through a lens of our perceptions and our beliefs. And a lot of what that is shaped by is sort of the energy inside of us. And so the energy leadership index assessment has these 2 primary areas of types of energy: catabolic energy and anabolic energy. These are energies that exist scientifically in the universe, but in terms of how we sort of understand them inside ourselves, catabolic energy is this really depleting, defeating energy. It's where we have a lot of binary thinking. We're frozen, stuck. You can sort of lay this on top of nervous system regulation as well. So thinking about like the lowest levels of energy, level 1 being more of that freeze state, right? And then level 2 energy, which is more related to sort of anger, combativeness, still this sort of depleting energy level is maybe more like fight. And then level 3, as you start to go up into anabolic energy, you're kind of going from tunnel vision to a prism of opportunities. And as you look at these levels, you can sort of feel the shift, right? Level 3, as you're coming out of anger, is rationalization. Level 4 is that like helper energy, service to others. Level 5 is really focused on win-win and mutual benefit. Level 6 is joy and connection. And level 7 is, kind of enlightenment or absolute passion, non-judgment. People don't live up at level 7, but we might have these tiny little like glimmers of it. And we are never one energy level. We are always a combination of different energy levels. And one of the ways that I think about it are like the old boom boxes with the lights flickering up and down. Maybe I'm aging myself when I explain that. But that's how I used to listen to music. And so we're always moving between these different energy levels. And we might notice that certain types of experiences like activate certain levels more than others. And one of the things I want to say is this is not fixed. Like even when you do the leadership index assessment, it's not like Myers-Briggs or anything like that where you are this thing, like you are a level 4 leader. leader. No, it's the perceptions or the beliefs that you're experiencing the world through right now seem to be really driven by a lot of level 4 energy, for example. So I guess the sort of reflection or question I would pose to the group is when you see these levels of energy, is there one energy level that kind of pops out to you and you're like, ooh, that's me? And there's likely an energy level that like when you're kind of in more of your flow state, you're like, okay, I bet that's my primary level of energy when I'm in flow. And then when you're activated into stress or triggered into stress, you're likely mostly level 1 or level 2, right? People either have like a primary stress reaction that's more kind of feeling stuck or paralyzed, experiencing perhaps more victimhood. This was 100% me. I was like the martyred executive director. I would go straight into that when I was activated into stress. Or level 2, if you get like, are maybe more angry or combative, and you feel that kind of like conflict energy. And when you are activated into stress, you should be in level 1 and level 2 because nobody's activated into like helper energy when they're stressed, right? And this the last thing I just want to say is the stress response is really important, right? There's no good or bad energy here, right? This is not about like, ooh, I'm feeling really level 2. I'm bad, that's bad energy. There are really important reasons to experience all energy levels, right? Like level 1 is important because it often protects us from taking action. Maybe our nervous system is too overloaded and we actually need to like step back and like go inward for a second and take care of ourselves. And then it's really about conscious choice, right? I will have something happen and I'm like, ooh, I am like all level 1 or level 2 right now. And I will set a timer on my phone and I will give myself 5 minutes to like get all up in my catabolic energy. And then when the timer goes off, I get to choose like, okay, now what energy level do I want to show up with right now? You know? And so again, like it's not about shaming ourselves for how we show up, but it's about recognizing that there are all these different states of being that we have access to. And it's really about bringing awareness to them and then feeling a sense of consciousness and choice around how we get to show up. There's
No,
so
I
much
have.
I could talk about here, but I'm gonna like hold myself.
So I can see myself in every single level depending on situations. Like it just, I understand that this part of the pages and part of what you've shared now, Mallory, that there's no shame in the game. It's like you're allowed to feel your feelings, and there are very real reasons for feeling these feelings, and also to be able to withholding that judgment from yourself, like much less for others, but for yourself, like to be able to take that step back, and just to be able to recognize that's a really big deal.
And I,
So
can I add one other thing to
yes,
that, Melissa?
yes,
I think, it's very common for us to see and sort of understand the situations that activate these levels of energy. And the thing I would just encourage everybody to do is think about on top of the situation, is there what's sort of known in coaching as a second harm? I don't talk about this in the book, but there's like first harm, second harm, right? So there's the situation that might activate that level of energy, particularly if you're thinking about a catabolic energy level. But then oftentimes there's this sort of second harm that we do to ourselves on top of the situation, which is the thoughts or the beliefs that start to spiral in our head that really keep us stuck in catabolic energy, right? Okay, so you messed up. But the difference between messing up and being like, okay, I messed up, I expect that of myself, I'm not perfect, and things like that happen, and your ability to then access anabolic energy after that is totally different than if you mess up and you're like, oh my God, I should have never done that. I've been doing this for 10 years. I can't believe I did that. How could I do that? And you spend hours, which I used to do, in that kind of spiral. That's how we really get stuck in catabolic energy, or we have those like playlists it's just kind of going in the background the whole time. And the thing about catabolic energy is it isn't always super conscious. Sometimes it's like two fingers in our side, right? It's just sort of like there in the background, dragging us down, depleting our energy, but we don't even have consciousness around necessarily where it's coming from. And so that's the only kind of other invitation I'd make around the levels of energy is one, bringing awareness to the situations that sort of naturally activate different things, and then paying attention to like, how do you talk to yourself when those things happen? Because that's where we have the most opportunity for change.
I feel like we could spend an hour just on that one
Yeah.
piece. So Mallory asked earlier, where you see yourself in these levels. I'm just curious. I'm gonna stop sharing for a hot second, just because we can't see everyone, and there are people in the waiting room and all that kind of good stuff. But I will put it back up. I'm curious if we can just hear from a few of us about the levels of energy and your thoughts on it.
Hi.
I particularly like the boombox, by the way, like being able to see like the flow. Yeah, totally. I'm sorry.
Uh,
Who was Christine?
it,
Thanks. Go.
my name is Christine, and I am from the Community Foundation of Broward, in addition to AFP Miami president. I would say I generally live between a 4 and a 5, generally, but then I have little pushes or moments in level 1. But I really love the idea of like setting your timer, feeling the feelings, going through and moving on. I mean, when I read level 1, I immediately like was fast forward or felt like time was going back, and I was in that moment again. Basically, I was working a gala as the VP of development, and I get a tap on the shoulder 10 minutes before saying that our person overseeing the event was going to the hospital, and I was now in charge. So I gave myself, I didn't know I was actually doing this, but wow, I did this before reading the book. I took a moment and I felt the feelings for about 5 minutes, took a deep breath and said, okay, I'm done feeling that feelings now. I told my 3 people, and then we just flew through, and it was fine. It ended up being fine. But while I don't like having to be in a level 1, I would say that, knowing that you have the time and space to feel it and give yourself that peace, and then to move on is good and needed. So thank you for this.
Thank you. Maybe one other person that might want to share for this particular spot, and then we're opening it up. And I can't see you, so please it's okay to just start talking. And then I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Christine, I am with you for kind of between levels 4 and 5, but again, I can see myself, depending on the situations, fluctuate. Great. I mean, it's human nature. You said nobody's perfect, and that took me to The Office and Pam when she was pregnant, and she said, nobody's perfect. And Dwight like lost it. He's like, that's amazing. That's the best thing I've ever heard. So yeah, just same kind of concept, guys. Questions for Mallory or questions for your colleagues? There was lots of meat in this book, that's for sure, to be able to talk through, again, the psychology, the neuroscience behind the work that we do every day, and to give ourselves the space and the opportunity and the mechanisms to be able to move from, if you're feeling that transactional fundraising, to be able to move to alignment fundraising. Yeah, Oscar.
Hey Mallory, how's it going? Oscar here. I just started 3 weeks ago as the new international major gifts officer at Grid Alternatives. Super thankful that you're here. Sorry if you hear like a lot of background noise. My washer's really loud. But anyways, Melissa gave us a perfect segue into my question because something that I thought about a lot with the book is that I feel like funders more and more are understanding like moving towards the you call it alignment fundraising. Other people call it like transformational fundraising, right?
Mm.
As opposed to traditional fundraising. Challenges I've experienced, and I'm sure others have in the past, is not so much shifting that mindset from the fundraiser to funder relationship, but the fundraiser to program staff
Mm.
relationship, right? Just wanted to hear your thoughts a little more. Is like, how do we like cut that isolation a lot of times that fundraisers feel from like program staff or operation staff or comm staff because they see our work as transactional.
Okay. Whoa. We need a part two for this question. Okay. But I love it. And I think there's a few different pieces here. I'm going to drop, I made you guys this little, one of the things that Melissa, didn't share, but is that I recently launched this company called Practivated, which is helps fundraisers have conversations with practice conversations, simulation conversations with donors, and get AI coaching through generative AI. And the reason I'm saying that right now is I created this toolkit for you, and you might be like, "What's that name of that company?" It's mine. So I just didn't want you to think that was coming from something weird. But it's also really interesting, Oscar, what you brought up, because we have inside Practivated all these different practice scenarios, and we just added this week a practice scenario for a fundraiser with a program officer, because this is such a common challenge that relates to your ability to then have these other funding conversations. So just to sort of validate, obviously you're not alone there at all. This is like the difference, we hear a lot about like the culture of philanthropy, and something I've been talking about for the last few years is like, okay, the culture of philanthropy is one thing, but what's the culture of fundraising? And how do we change the culture of fundraising inside our organizations? And something I'll often do when I'm doing an organizational training or something like that is help people understand like where stigma is actually showing up inside the organization in different ways. And so how is fundraising being talked about as a full group, right? What do you believe? Like, is there an opportunity for your fundraising team to explain to everybody else what fundraising actually is? Not in a way that has everybody being like, I'm not a fundraiser. Are you going to ask me to ask for money? But it's like, hey, we want to explain the culture of fundraising in our organization, like how we see this being a really important part of our work in movement building, in creating advocates and community members like who are also sort of connected to this mission. The other thing is, I mean, I wrote this book and I say this in the introduction, not just for fundraisers, but for exactly these moments. Like, is there a chapter? I mean, photocopy it, take photos of it. I don't care if you don't buy it, but to have people help other people understand what the fundraising experience really is like what you want, but then kind of what you're up against, and that you need them to be champions of a healthy fundraising culture, just like anybody else, right? Like, one of the hardest things is when that stigma is inside your organization, right? That leads to further feelings of isolation for fundraisers because they're isolated inside their own organization. So I think there are a few things. I think one are, being able to talk to um, like people on an individual level where maybe you're feeling more of that kind of like pushback, and be like, hey, I feel like, the way I hear you, I totally understand why you feel that way about fundraising. There's a lot of stigma in the world around what fundraising is and what it looks like. And I'd love to explain sort of like how we think about it and what we're doing here at our organization to really do things differently. And then also figuring out if there are group opportunities to be able to do that as well. And maybe even just opening more of a curious conversation around like, hey, what are some of your, like, let's just say all the things, right? Like, let's just say all the things. Let's just put up on a wall what everyone's perceptions and beliefs are, where they come from, and like helping them understand, in the book, I talk about the cognitive behavior loop, right? And so like if our discomfort around fundraising or, what you're talking about on the program, like staff side, that's coming from thoughts and beliefs that they're holding. And the only way to change how they feel about fundraising and then ultimately how they talk about fundraising is to start to open up and change some of those thoughts and those beliefs. Also, this toolkit thing is not the actual simulation tool. It's a PDF guide of an alignment fundraising toolkit, but it's just offered through Practivated. So that's what it is. There's no, yeah, just to be clear about that. I realize it's not that clear on the page. It's what I get for whipping something up really quickly. To want to give you more resources. Is that helpful, Oscar?
Yes, that was fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just thank you for that. And then just if you haven't been to Mallory's website already, malloryerickson.com, she has an entire page full of videos and trainings and things that are available on demand because fundraisers like free things. So we're going to go ahead and link to that as well as more information about Practivated. So stay tuned for that because you'll get that in the email follow-up. Any other questions for Mallory? We have time for one more.
I have a question.
Ahead.
Can this book be bought in bulk at a discount? I'm inclined to give them as gifts to some of my colleagues, and invite them, not only to read it, but to join the local AFP chapter, so that they can take advantage of the resources. And then, secondly, I wanted to, as we were talking about the levels of energy, Mallory, you touched upon, I'm going to call them triggers. When you're at 1, 2, 3, I'll go to your website, but I'd be very curious and interested in learning more about your consultancy work because I know I find for me personally, keeping a positive mental attitude, transcending to 4, 5, and 6 with some of the triggers that you encounter at 1, 2, and 3, that loop issue that you were talking about is real. And, we all want to win-win and bring everyone else along with us and celebrate, together. But it's challenging sometimes to get beyond the 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to go right back to with the expectations of leadership. And you've got a $90 million campaign. Well, not technically a campaign, but annual goal. And the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. So would be interested and curious in knowing more about that type of your work that you're doing.
Yes. Okay, that's so kind of you to ask. And I'll drop a few different things in here. So I put the bulk orders, that's all through the publishers. And then I have a group coaching program twice a month, live coaching with me and an incredible group of leaders. That's the main way that I support fundraisers in coaching right now. So I just dropped that link in there. And then I have a course that I dropped the link to as well. I'm trying to find we can make sure that you guys have this too. I have a stress course. It's like a 30-minute course, but it gives you some like somatic and cognitive nervous system regulation techniques that are particularly designed to help diffuse catabolic energy and be able to bring you up into like anabolic energy levels. It was actually also sponsored by Donor Perfect, so it's totally free to fundraisers. And so that's inside this community, which is completely free also. So I'm just kind of adding all those things there. And then, Practivated, it is AI tools. Like my human capacity was starting to get maxed out. And so I've been building these tools to help be able to support more fundraisers at a more affordable cost with a coach inside the platform that's trained in all of my like frameworks and strategies. So if you're open to that sort of technology side of it, we particularly work with a lot of higher ed organizations actually. That might be a good thing to check out too. And then, when I'm not sure how far you are in the book, but in the book, I tried to give a lot of really kind of tangible strategies. And like when I started to write this book, everybody was like, Mallory, nobody's going to join your programs anymore. You're giving everybody everything away. And I was like, well, my goal is to help as many people as possible and make it as accessible as possible. So I'm just going to not listen to you and do it anyways. But I hope like that gives you a good like jumping off point. And then if you want that sort of like connection and to other fundraisers working through those same things, those same triggers, for all of you guys, like the number one thing I would say right now, and we can have during we can set up a call and talk through these things in more detail too, um, is like awareness. Like if the number one thing you start to do is just be aware of where catabolic and anabolic energy are showing up, what sort of happening inside the brain and body at that time, and just get curious around it, like, ooh, I wonder why that situation like really triggered me, right? There's some that are super obvious, but then there's others where we'll find ourselves spiraling. Like I used to do it when people would be super late to something, and I was like, why is that like activating all of my stuff? And so just starting to get curious about that in your own kind of cognitive behavior loop, I think it'll bring everybody like a lot farther than you might think. Just because what somebody was saying at the beginning, we don't take time usually in our go, go, go and hustle to hold all these things together to like notice how we feel and the relationship it has to what we're doing or not doing. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's great intel, great feedback, great book. Mallory, thank you so much for writing the book, for being with us, and just being able to share, such vast resources with us all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Guys, can we get a round of applause for Miss Mallory Erickson? Yes.
Thank you guys so much for the work that you do. I'm so glad that the book is supporting you. I wrote it for myself and like as much as I wrote it for everyone. So when you hear it speaking to you, that's the goal. And I'm just so grateful for you moving money towards what matters most and getting to play a small role in helping you do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we are going to be wrapping up for now. Just some closing notes. So if you haven't already nominated someone for NPD, please do so. That deadline is July 11th. Save the date for November 7th at Jungle Island. We've got education on how AI actually works and what it means for fundraising on July 17th. Check out the website for that. For future members, we've got that code for $50 off. And please save the date. So we've got one more book club session this summer, August 21st. We're going to be at the Peacock Foundation office. Joelle and I are going to be having a conversation with folks about the Happy, Healthy Nonprofit. Again, talking about the softer skills and organizational culture around what affects the staff's focus and energy that makes this also mission critical. So again, another book to be able to dig into the softer skills and yet the important skills of the energy work and the people behind the organizations, each and every one of you, our colleagues. So thank you so much for being here. You will get the recording and you will get lots of links and things for Mallory to be able to continue the conversation with her directly by week's end. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here and have a great one.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mallory.